Hello and welcome to this City and Guilds webinar. This webinar will provide guidance for centres on preparing and delivering employer-set projects and the management and administration occupational specialism. The webinar will also provide guidance on uploading evidence. There will be two presenters during the webinar, myself, Josh Keeling, Operational Delivery Manager for Communications, and my colleague, Marion McGiven, Operational Delivery Manager for T-Levels. Okay, so we'll just go through the agenda first of all. This webinar will cover the aims of the webinar, the lessons learned from previous series, an overview of the Employer Set project and Management and Administration Occupational Specialism and a reminder of timelines, delivering the ESP and Management and Administration Occupational Specialism assessments, evidence requirements, completing assessment documentation, uploading student evidence, the evidence issue resolution process, and resources which are available for support. Okay, so we'll just go through the aims of the webinar now. Okay, so the aims of the webinar are on the screen, and the aims are to support you with tips on preparation and upload of evidence, to provide system support and guidance, to provide help to avoid issues and the need to contact you, to avoid delays in the marking process, and to ensure your students can get their results on time. Just to manage expectations, this webinar is not providing advice on how to conduct the assessments or guidance on assessment conditions generally. It is focused on providing tips on gathering the evidence and uploading the evidence in order to prevent delays with marking and the release of results.
So what is the Employer Set project? The Employer Set project is made up of a number of tasks based on a real-life work-based problem. The assessment is designed to allow students to show how they can tackle problems using the knowledge and skills learnt in the core components. The Employer Set project is externally set and externally marked by City and Guilds, and all evidence for the Employer Set project should be submitted for marking via Walled Garden ahead of the published deadline dates. And I will be clarifying the deadline dates further on in this presentation. You as providers are responsible for the delivery of the assessment in line with the guidance provided, gathering student evidence and submitting this in time to City and Guilds for marking. So please ensure that you give yourself enough time to review all the guidance we've provided and supporting documents, and then make sure that you submit all the available evidence for every student who has attempted the Employer Set project. So moving on, this slide talks about the Management and Administration Occupational Specialism. So for those providers who are delivering this in summer 2025, this occupational specialism is the only occupational specialism which is externally marked, not moderated, and therefore will also require the evidence to be uploaded via Walled Garden evidence management. And as providers, you're responsible for delivering the assessment in line with the guidance, gathering all this evidence to Walled Garden, and then uploading that within the deadlines. Just a point to note, all the other occupational specialisms for summer 2025 are moderated, and the marks would be uploaded to Moderation Portal, and you can find separate guidance on the occupational specialisms via the City and Guilds website.
So okay, now we'll be looking at learning lessons from the previous series. Okay, so there are a number of issues that we often see with evidence uploads, which are listed over the next few slides. So the issues covered on this slide are missing evidence, unclear learner evidence where we're unsure which student it relates to or unsure if it had been included in the same document as another task, missing or incomplete tutor evidence, such as observation records from presentations, evidence being created but the centre not uploading it, either not converting the file type or not thinking the evidence was needed, an incomplete or missing evidence checklist, an evidence checklist that was missing the required issue codes, a declaration of authenticity that was missing or incomplete, and a declaration of authenticity that was missing the required signatures. We do just want to emphasise how important it is to upload the evidence correctly. That avoids problems with marking and release of results. It also means that our team here don't have to follow up with centres to make sure that things are uploaded in the right way. And that obviously then saves time for us and for you as centres delivering qualifications with us. Okay, so a few more issues are covered on this slide. The issues covered on this slide are fully or partially corrupted files, poor audio quality in videos, poor video quality in videos, a student or students who are off screen, a student who is seated, a student who is unidentifiable in the video, too many students taking part in a group discussion, a Q&A which is not recorded, a video recording which is incomplete, a presentation delivered via Teams, and inconsistent practices for different students across the same assessment. We've mentioned group discussions on this slide, but not all qualifications include a group discussion as part of their assessment process. So that's obviously only applicable to the qualifications which do include that. And lastly, on this slide, we've got a graph showing some of the biggest problem areas we saw with evidence uploads during the autumn series. These were incomplete evidence checklist, 9%, declaration of authenticity, missing signatures, 9%, missing or incomplete tutor evidence, 10%, presentations delivered via Teams or Zoom, 11%, unclear evidence, 11%, and missing evidence, 50%. So missing evidence was by far the biggest problem that we saw. That was the issue in 50% of cases.
So moving on to the timelines. So for the next slide, this shows the animal care and management. So Summer 25 is the first exam series for the animal care and management where students can sit the core, paper 1, paper 2 and the employer set project. So the booking windows for these assessments closed on the 14th of March. The assessment materials were released on the 17th of March, and we are approaching the assessment delivery window commencing on Monday the 24th of March, and you'll be able to access all your bookings on the evidence management system from this date, Monday the 24th, and begin uploading your evidence. Note the submission deadline date here of the 9th of May. Therefore, all your evidence must be complete and uploaded by this final deadline date of the 9th of May. So moving on, the next slide details the engineering and engineering and manufacturing 8730. And for engineering and manufacturing booking windows, these assessments closed on the 7th of March, and the assessment materials were released on the 10th of March. So we're approaching the assessment delivery window commencing on Monday the 31st of March, and that's when you'll be able to access your bookings on evidence management system to begin uploading. So moving on to the next slide, you'll see this is for on-site construction, the 8710, building services engineering, 8711, management and admin, 8715, and agricultural land management and production, the 8717. So you should have made all your bookings by now, as we're in the very late booking window, which closes on the 21st of March, and assessment materials are released on the 24th of March. The assessment delivery window commencing on Monday the 31st of March, and you'll be able to access the bookings on the evidence management system from Monday the 31st to begin uploading your evidence through the delivery window, again with the submission deadline date of the 9th of May. So moving on, the next slide details the management and administration occupational specialism, and as I already mentioned, this is the only occupational specialism which is externally marked by City and Guilds and not moderated, and therefore follows the same process for uploading the evidence via walled garden as the other ESP employer set projects. So the booking window and assessment materials were released back in January, and we're partway through the assessment window. And walled garden evidence management has been open since the 3rd of February for you to begin uploading your evidence in readiness for the submission deadline of the 16th of May, as you can see on the slide there. So all your management and admin occupational specialism evidence should be complete and fully uploaded by that deadline of the 16th of May. So moving on, the next slide just is a summary of the dates that I've just gone through, just on one slide for you, just to show you that all the employer set projects, the assessment window dates there, as I've said, and the submission deadline date of the 9th of May, and the management and admin occupational specialism of the 16th of May. And just to point out again that there is separate information and guidance relating to all the other occupational specialisms, which would be uploaded via the moderation portal, and you can access that from the City and Guilds website should you require it. So moving on to the next slide. On this slide, I've detailed some information relating to late submission of evidence and charges, and some detail around applying for extensions or notifying us of delivery issues. So firstly, I just wanted to point out we don't want to have to charge additional charges in relation to the submission of evidence. However, chasing for evidence past the deadline dates does cause significant additional work and resource, and we're working to extremely tight marking deadlines. So to avoid any charges, please do follow the guidance closely and ensure that all items are returned accurately with full completed evidence checklist, signed declaration of authenticity, and all the relevant supporting documents along with all the evidence, as this will avoid us having to chase and give you any additional charges. So as Josh pointed out on some of the previous slides, missing evidence was one of the most common issues, and this is chargeable. And I just also wanted to point out, in addition to this, another example, if you have submitted all your evidence within the deadline, but you may have failed to submit the evidence checklist or you don't have a signed declaration, then this does constitute incomplete evidence and charges will be applied. And in later slides, we will be reviewing the evidence requirements in a bit more detail and supporting documents to help and support you within this presentation. On to delivery issues on this slide. If for any reason you cannot meet the deadlines, you are required to notify us via a specific form which is available on the website under the assessment guidance area within the T-Levels Resource Hub. The link will be available on these slides that we'll share. However, please note that additional charges are still applicable on any late submissions, even if you have notified us. So moving on.
Okay, so now we're going to look at delivering the EmploySet project and management and administration occupational specialism assessments. The first point to mention in this section is that City and Guilds will use the T-Level service portal to release the live ESP assessment materials and management and administration occupational specialism securely to centres, including all the supporting assessment documentation, such as evidence checklists and declaration of authenticity. To access materials, you should follow the instructions on this slide. The materials will only be made available to those providers who are approved, have valid registrations, and have entered their students onto the specific assessment series. Once downloaded, providers must keep all assessment materials stored securely at all times in line with JCQ guidance. Providers should take time to familiarise themselves with the guidance ahead of the assessment series when the assessments must take place. In previous series, we have encountered issues where documentation which is produced or saved by the students themselves is not completed accurately or in full. To address this, we advise taking a number of steps. So firstly, ensure students know their unique City and Guilds enrolment number, or ENR. Secondly, provide students with the header templates for any evidence that will be generated electronically. And thirdly, if notes are handwritten and later scanned in, ensure that students write their name and enrolment number clearly. It is also important to ensure that the assessment conditions are known to the students. So to address this, we advise that you provide students with the guidance material appropriate to each task they must complete, and ensure that students are aware of time restrictions for all tasks.
So moving on to discuss special consideration. So we are aware that students and providers can be fully prepared, but there are some adverse circumstances which are beyond your control, and there may be a situation where you feel the student has been disadvantaged. And in that scenario, you would have the option to apply for special consideration. Now, there is lots of information available on the City and Guilds website with links to the JCQ Joint Council for Qualifications, and we apply special consideration following the JCQ guidance. So you can access information and a link to the form for application for special consideration via the Centre Document Library on our website under Access Arrangements, and you can access the link from this slides, which we'll be sharing afterwards. So please ensure if you're applying for special consideration that you complete the form accurately, stating a full explanation and reason as to why you feel the student has been disadvantaged. So some examples of when applying for special consideration where it may or may not be applicable. So on the slide you'll see the student is ill and misses a day of the assessment. So the first box there in grey, the assessment can be rescheduled within the window, and in that situation an application for special consideration is not required. If the student in the middle box there in red is ill for the whole assessment window, you can enter the student for the next series. And if it's their final series, then in that situation, you could apply for special consideration. So if you have a video recording, for example, and you have reviewed it before uploading and discovered the sound is missing, you can, at this stage, apply for special consideration. So moving on.
Okay, so moving on now to look at evidence requirements. So firstly, looking at file formats and sizes. Where the minimum evidence requirements have not been submitted or the quality of evidence is insufficient to make a judgment, any judgment will be based on the evidence that has been submitted. Where this is insufficient to provide a mark of 0 may be given. So please ensure that larger files such as videos are compressed to reduce their size. If you need to do this, there are tools which can support you. We do not require video files to be of full high definition quality. They just need to be of reasonable quality and without pixelation. The table at the bottom of the slide shows the maximum file sizes we recommend for videos which are uploaded to Walled Garden. So videos should be no more than 2.5 gigabytes in size, and the resolution should be 720p or 1280 by 720. Making sure that videos are of sufficient quality and can be uploaded to Walled Garden is the responsibility of the provider, and this must be planned in advance to avoid late submissions which could lead to late results. For video recordings, as I just mentioned, the maximum file size is 2.5 gigabytes with a resolution of 720 pixels. By sticking to 720p, you should be able to ensure that all video files recorded have a file size of less than 2.5 gigabytes as required. Please note that anything higher than that cannot be uploaded to Walled Garden. As highlighted at the bottom of this slide, please do consider the environment and recording equipment prior to the assessment commencing, and test the equipment to make sure that the video and audio quality will be of a high enough standard for marking to take place. As part of this test, please make sure that the camera is in the right position and at the right angle, and make sure that the audio is sufficiently clear for marking to take place. This slide covers a few tips for ensuring that you get a good audio quality on your recordings. So firstly, a microphone separate from the recording device should be considered to ensure good quality audio can be captured. For presentation tasks, the microphone should be close to or on the student, for example, a lapel microphone. And for group discussions, the microphone should be placed between the students, i.e. the area they are projecting their voice towards. This may not be towards the video recorder, so for example, you could use a desk microphone. This is another reason that it's important to do a test run beforehand so that the audio quality is good enough when you actually record the assessment. On this slide are a few examples of problems that can affect marking. It's important to avoid the issues mentioned here. For example, the candidate sitting down. Assessment guidance asks that the candidate is standing to present. Unable to identify the student with no ID, poor audio, or the room being too dark. And then another example, presenting via Teams or a Zoom call. So you can record via Teams, but you can't present via Teams. So it's important to bear that in mind. Here are some examples of good practice. The student should be clearly introduced at the start of the presentation, and you should aim to hit the points mentioned here. So please make sure the student is standing, make sure you have good lighting and a good angle, and make sure that the student can be clearly heard. Okay, so now we're going to look at how to complete assessment documentation. There are a number of pieces of documentation which you need to complete when uploading students' evidence. This includes a declaration of authenticity, an evidence checklist, candidate-generated evidence, tutor observation records, and video file evidence. The declaration of authenticity allows us to authenticate the candidate's work as their own. One declaration needs to be completed per candidate. Where the candidate or tutor is unable to or does not confirm authenticity through signing a declaration form, we will remove the evidence, nothing will progress to be marked, and we will change the submission to Work Not Submitted, or WNS. If any question of authenticity arises, the provider may be contacted for justification of authentication. Any delay in submitting a completed declaration or responding to any queries will potentially delay the release of results. And please note that the declaration of authenticity is mandatory for marking. When completing the declaration of authenticity, please ensure that all qualification and candidate details are accurately inputted into the appropriate fields. Include an explanation of any additional support that has been provided to the candidate, and ensure the form is signed and dated in the correct boxes by both the candidate and the tutor. If the declaration of authenticity is not signed and dated, then we cannot deem the evidence to be valid and it cannot be marked. If we find an unsigned declaration form, our centre operations team will need to contact centres and request the document to be signed by both the student and the tutor or supervisor, and it must then be re-uploaded to Walled Garden. The evidence checklist must be completed by the centre and submitted to City and Guilds along with the student's evidence. The form supports centre staff involved in the uploading of the evidence to the City and Guilds Walled Garden by identifying any evidence that is known to be missing. For example, if a student did not attempt a task or the evidence has been lost for this, then the completion of the evidence checklist must reflect the actual evidence which is being provided for marking. And again, as noted at the bottom of the slide here, this document is mandatory for marking, and an incomplete or incorrectly completed evidence checklist could lead to delayed results while further information is requested from the provider. When completing the evidence checklist, candidate and qualification details must be correctly entered. Confirmation of files must be appropriately ticked. And a Y for yes or N for no must be entered next to every piece of required evidence within the checklist and must align with all evidence uploaded to Walled Garden. Issue codes must be entered where evidence is missing or incomplete. These can be referenced from the table and must be entered into the box beside missing or poor quality evidence. This supports marking as the detailing of the codes explains why the evidence is not present and avoids confusion for the marker. We expect all evidence to be present for marking, and the evidence checklist provides us with confidence that providers have ensured that all necessary elements of the employer set project are captured and submitted for assessment, allowing for a comprehensive evaluation of a candidate's skills and abilities against the set criteria, preventing missing evidence, and supporting a fair and accurate grading process. The codes ensure that all aspects of the unit are properly addressed and no important criteria are missed. This streamlines the marking process by eliminating the need to search through evidence to identify where specific criteria are addressed. If the evidence has not been produced or has been lost, then the marker will understand why. and this helps to avoid any delays with results. There are various codes which can be inputted next to evidence depending on the particular issue with that piece of evidence. For example, there are learner-related codes such as L1, which is to be used when the evidence has been generated by the learner but not saved by the learner. In addition, there are provider-related codes such as P5, which is to be used when a file has been corrupted. Issue codes can be referenced from the table and inputted into the box beside missing or poor quality evidence. Where a provider-related issue code is present, further explanation must be inputted into the provider comments section. And the evidence checklist must be correctly signed and dated once complete. Moving on now to look at student-generated evidence. All evidence produced by the student must be uploaded to the evidence management area of Wall Garden within Centre Services. This includes Word documents, Excel files, PowerPoint presentations, handwritten notes, drawings, diagrams, and recorded video evidence. Providers are responsible for ensuring that all candidate-generated evidence is accounted for, and for ensuring that it is not accidentally misplaced or destroyed prior to uploading. Evidence headers included within the resource pack must be present within all evidence and must correctly identify the candidate. Observation records are mandatory for certain TQs or T-level technical qualifications. Please ensure that if an observation record has been provided, it is completed. When a student completes a recorded presentation or discussion, the observing tutor must complete the observation record. The form should be completed based on an individual candidate's performance, not for multiple candidates within a group discussion. And please note that if provided, this document is mandatory for marking. When completing an observation record, please ensure that all candidate details are correct and all text boxes are filled in with reasonable and accurate detail. Finally, please ensure that the document is signed and dated by the observing tutor. Moving on now to look at what happens next, and we'll start with pre-marking checks. Once a candidate is submitted, we perform a number of internal pre-marking checks to ensure you've submitted everything correctly, the evidence is complete, and that any video or audio files play as expected. We do this to identify issues as early as possible before the evidence is marked, and our centre operations team will contact you regarding any issues identified at this stage. Moving on to marking. When pre-marking checks are complete, the evidence is sent for marking. We may still need to contact you throughout this process if the marker identified any issues or requires additional evidence. And lastly, administration fees, which Marion talked about a little bit earlier. Centres that do not submit all required marks and/or evidence to City and Guilds by the published date will incur an administrative fee of £300 per cohort per assessment. This means that if we identify issues with the evidence provided for your candidates, the administration fee will apply. This fee will apply under all circumstances, regardless of candidate volumes, including where an extension has been granted.
So, uploading student evidence and preparing evidence for upload. All student evidence must be appropriately titled before being uploaded to Wall Garden to make it clear what each file contains and which student it belongs to. So clear labelling supports the assessment process as it indicates what piece of evidence each file contains and how it relates to the project. Evidence must have a file name that clearly indicates the content of the document. So as in the example on the slide there, we've got XYZ1234, which would be your enrolment number, 871033, which would detail the assessment code, which in this case for building services BSE, and the task 1.1. So that's a clear example that's appropriate, and it clearly shows what the evidence is. Or, for example, if the candidate was doing the engineering design and development, you would have the different assessment code of 8730035 and maybe have a task that might be CAD drawing or a Gantt chart, for example. So the example at the bottom of this slide is for one candidate with the enrolment number ENR1234, and you'll see the file names are all relevant to the content, with examples of the file types and also showing examples of the tags. So like the first one there with DOA, you can clearly see that's the declaration of authenticity, or the evidence checklist with the evidence checklist task. So moving on, want to note that files with duplicate names cannot be uploaded to all gardens. So if an error was identified with evidence, it must be re-uploaded, and we ask that you please include like updated within the file name to clearly indicate this is a new, latest updated version for marking. Labelling must be consistent throughout the cohort, with each student's evidence using the same file naming conventions. Each piece of evidence, including observation records, must be in a separate file. Verify that the files for each student match the evidence listed as available in the evidence checklist, and it is recommended that you fill out the evidence checklist as documents are being uploaded to Walled Garden to ensure the accuracy. And as I said, files can't be deleted from the Walled Garden, so please ensure the correct documents are being uploaded in the first instance, and in case of an error, then include updated in the file name. We ask that you ensure a student's work is accessible and ensure that it's not password protected. The file can be opened. Ensuring that all evidence files are clearly titled will assist any staff who are uploading evidence to Walled Garden and ensure that mistakes can be quickly identified and easily rectified. So moving on. When you are ready to upload your evidence to Walled Garden, you can log into Walled Garden, select Centre Services and select Evidence Management, and make sure that you choose the correct academic window, as in the screenshot there showing summer 2025. You would input the assessment codes to see a list of the students, and if you need to find a specific student, then you can input the enrolment number, the ENR, into the enrolment number box, or the name into the student name box, and then click search. This will then retrieve all the active bookings which require evidence to be uploaded for summer 2025. So in this case, all the employer set projects and the management and admin occupational specialism. So moving on, you will then see this screen, you'll see all the bookings that are retrieved. So there's a list on the screen there. Now it's very important at this stage, if you look through and you notice an inaccuracy or missing information here, it's important that you contact our customer support team immediately so that we can resolve it. It may be that a booking's been missed, and obviously that would require to be sorted as soon as possible. So moving on. Once you have accessed the correct candidate to upload the evidence, you click on Upload Files, as you can see in the first screenshot there. And as I stated earlier, you can no longer delete files from Walled Garden. So if you upload an incorrect file, just upload a new file with a different name, i.e. including file name version 1, and include updated, as I said, in the file name. And that way it's easily identifiable. So go to the relevant folder on your device. You would select the necessary file, or you can press Ctrl and A to upload all the files, and press Open to start uploading. Each piece of evidence uploaded must then be tagged against the relevant assessment task that it relates to, as shown in the bottom screenshot there. So you've got 1.1 research or 1.2 report, and you would tag the appropriate tag. So moving on. When you are then prompted with this screen here, you can either save or submit the evidence. So as you're working through uploading individual bits of evidence, you would press save if you still have evidence to upload against that student. So Only once you're ready to fully submit all your evidence would you use the box on the right there, the red button with submit. You would then press submit to confirm all the evidence is ready to upload for that student, and you would only do that when you're confident that it's all 100% accurate and ready to be submitted. You will not be able to upload additional evidence after pressing that submit, so please do ensure that everything's complete once you hit the submit button. So moving on, if the student has not completed any work for the assessment, they must be entered as work not submitted within walled garden. No documents are needed to be submitted to confirm this. If the student has withdrawn or disengaged with the assessment midway through the qualification, then all existing evidence and a completed declaration of authority must still be uploaded if available, and their work will still be marked. So you'll find, as in the screenshot there, the work not submitted button is at the bottom of the student's walled garden upload page as shown there.
Now we're going to look at our process for escalating evidence issues. If there are any issues with evidence, we will initially contact the senior designated exam office contact and the T-levels lead for your centre. We will highlight the evidence issues and ask that these are resolved within 2 working days. If this is not achievable, we will work with you on a resolution date. Where we encounter a lack of response or resolution, we will escalate this to the senior designated contact at your centre. And this slide provides a summary of the role of the senior designated contact and their accountabilities and responsibilities. Okay, so this slide outlines our contact process to centres if issues are identified with the evidence provided. So firstly, we will contact you as soon as we identify an issue with the student's evidence, asking for resolution within 2 working days. We'll then move on to a reminder. If we've had no response or resolution of the issue, we will remind you again after the 2 working days. There will then be an escalation, so failure to action the previous requests will lead to a further communication to your senior designated contact at your centre. And finally, we'll move on to compliance. So any further lack of response will require intervention from our investigation and compliance team, who will then contact you. Now, obviously, we will work closely with centres to address any issues and agree a timeline for resolution, in which case we wouldn't need to escalate through these steps. And obviously, it is always our preference to work with centres to address this without going through all of these steps to a formal compliance process. Okay, so the last thing we're going to look at is the resources which are available for support. On this slide are a number of resources to support you. That includes the T-Levels Resource Hub, the T-Levels Service Portal, and the T-Levels Providers Information. If you have any questions or you need any additional help and support, you can contact the Centre Operations team using the details provided on this slide.